Ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, the Fuzz is here, and it's time for another Spellweaver talk. Today's topic will be an extension of a forum post I made in our awesome Spellweaver forums about the game-defining cards, the cards that have effectively shaped the meta into what it is, the cards that have been used the most, the big dudes, the guys that matter, the guys at the top of the food chain. And some of these are more influential than others. Some have been more or less fixed. So let's get started right away. We're going to go straight to the top of the Mafia chain. Starting off with our big buddy, Lord Karthus, Death Speaker. He's the head honcho right now. And I've already expressed what I dislike about this card. I don't think any creature should just be able to outright kill something when it comes in, just like that. That doesn't sound like fun to me. Now, the other effect, the giving life, I actually think is fine. My idea for Mr. Karthus was to change his effect, that instead of destroying a creature, he gets to distribute, let's say, up to 2 might counters and or up to 2 weakness counters on creatures on the board. This way, he could still serve as a great deterrent to aggro. You could, in fact, use him to kill 2 small creatures and maybe power up one of your own creatures. He would still make a big impact on the board, but he wouldn't just be an all-purpose answer to any threat your opponent might play. Because right now, the existence of Karthus means that any new awesome legendary we get, if you consider playing it, you think, well, it might just get killed by Karthus. And I feel like Zera, the new corruption one, is kind of under this umbrella, where it's an awesomely designed card that I would love to play, but I'm always worried, well, what if it just gets killed by Karthus? And, well, I just lose it for nothing, and my opponent gets a big body, gets life, and all that other stuff. So my idea was make it give out might counters and weakness counters. I went with 2, because I think 3 might be a little overkill, and 1 might not be enough. So go with 2, just try it out, see how it works. And now moving on to Lord Karthus's second in command, Cataclysm, the other big culprit of all this. Cataclysm's ability to just wipe the board has made it that it's basically become the ultimate anti-aggro tool for control decks. You try to ramp to it as quickly as possible, wipe the board, and then you start rolling out your creatures. Now, Cataclysm itself isn't entirely to blame. He gets kind of enabled by his lieutenants, New Horizons and Obelisk of Unity. I'll cover them a little bit later in the video. Without those guys, it wouldn't be as ridiculous, since not as many decks will be able to use Cataclysm. But to be honest, Dominion already has excellent removal. You've got Helm of Dominion, you've got Drayla, you don't need the only board wipe. Now, my big issue with this card is that it seems to kind of countermand one of the great things about Spellweaver, and that is the fact that we have 2 rows, the front row and the support row. Because you just play this card, man, it clears the whole board. My initial idea for this card was to only make it destroy either all creatures on the front row or all the creatures on the support row. There is an issue with that, however, and that's to do with the fact that right now, you can actually play a creature on the front row, move it to the support row, and then move it back and forth as many times as you want. So if you play, for instance, a Master Tactician, swing with all your soldiers, you could then move him back to the support line. So if we change Cataclysm in that way, you could just put all your guys on the support line, drop Cataclysm, and then just put him right back on the front. And that would make Cataclysm even worse, because then it would just be a one-way wipe. That is absolutely not what I'm looking for. So I'm not really sure how to get around that problem. Maybe being able to switch between front and back as easily is a bit of an issue. But I think the developers did that to make it kind of convenient for the players. Because I know you sometimes accidentally drag your creature to the back row when you don't mean to, and then you can just throw it right back, so it's no problem. So I'm not really expecting that kind of a change. But other than that, I'm not sure how you can deal with this card. You could make it more expensive, I guess, or make it 3 aspects, but that's just gonna mean it comes out 1 turn later, and it still effectively fulfills the same role. One of the things it comes down to is just the structure of this game is having 4 copies means you can potentially run 4 Cataclysms. So this is one of the riddles. I'm not sure how to deal with Cataclysm. There's a rather lengthy forum post about this card alone. I'll link it in the description. With just a bunch of us talking about this card alone. How it kind of, makes some of the games not fun because, oh, Cataclysm, my whole board is gone. So I don't know what we can do about this. Maybe somebody will come up with a great suggestion that we can implement. The one I had, unfortunately, is probably not going to work. Unless it's done in some other way, but I'm not really sure how. But anyways, let's move on to the next big card. Let me pull them up right away. Pull it up right away. Sanctum of the Void. So, Soul Prison is probably the best skill shrine you can get, just because it offers you removal against any threat, and that's recurring removal. Yes, you have to give up a draw to be able to play this, but then you get access to removal, and then you can do it every third turn, and just remove at no cost. And in my previous video, when I was talking about the skills, I suggested that there should be some kind of a cost added to this, so that it is more or less in line with the Tribute to the Fire Lord, where you have to discard a random card to deal the 3 damage. Now that has a cooldown of 2, but it has a cost, and the card you discard is random. So you couldn't necessarily just benefit Reanimator decks, because you could discard your Reanimate, for instance. I don't know if that's the right choice for this, but there should be something. Because this card, along with Karthus and Cataclysm, is what's kind of... It's got this chokehold on the meta. This remove everything control decks. Which is forcing players, at least from my perspective, is to use the following card, which is the next guy on the list. Lamp of Zephyr. Now, thankfully, the lamp has already been somewhat nerfed. It costs 2 blue, which is a big deal, actually, because before, when it was 1, you could literally play it in everything. I got to the point where I started including it in everything. Even my Mana Corruption deck just threw in blue, throw in a couple lamps. Why not, right? I mean, it was this good. Just as far as creature stats go, 4 attack and 3 health is excellent stats. It trades favorably with basically everything except for the biggest creatures. 3 speed is, again, just amazing. And the fact that it can attack and defend means that in the late game, it is just a ridiculously good tool to have. And it is one of the reasons that most decks run... Usually it's the Gnome Power Engineer, because that's one of the only 2 cards you can run. That or Unicorn. And most control decks use blue, so they gotta run Gnome Power Engineer, or they have to deal with the Lamp of Zephyr, and often is a creature they can't kill, because it's immune to all the removal, and it hits hard enough to be a threat. It cannot be killed by Karthus, it cannot be killed by Cataclysm. But I don't think this card is such a big culprit, because to me it seems like it's a response. At least that's how I've responded more or less to the meta. Just run lamps and try to use them to get around the big removal stuff. However many of them you can get past the Gnome Power Engineers. That said, it's still at the top of the power curve, no doubt about it. Though I don't think it's above the power curve, like to the point where you'd have to nerf it. Maybe one day it will be. What I would like to see is actually a smaller version of this. An artifact that can become a creature that's just not as powerful as this. Maybe a 2/2 with 2 speed. Like a activatable golem, if you will. I don't know. Something to consider in the future. So, those are the main culprits. There are a few accomplices. One of the main ones, where are you, my friend? Cathedral of the Night. Now, this card, maybe not as ridiculous as the Soul Prison, but still pretty good. I suggested in my other video, make this double Dominion. Just so that it's not as easily available, because putting on a weakness emblem and gaining 2 life, it turns out it's pretty damn good every 3 turns. And although I think if some of the other guys went away or were changed, this card wouldn't be as ridiculous. It would just be pretty good. But nonetheless, it is one of the defining cards because it's very popular, because it's very good. Next up on the list, let's go into the enablers. I discussed these guys already. Obelisk of Unity and New Horizons. They both basically do the same thing. They give you access to other aspects. So you can start with blue, and then you just go into whatever you want. Which one is worse? I'm not sure. There is, again, a lengthy post about the obelisk itself and how it should either be... Let me click through it. How it should be either legendary, because you play it, you get a card. So there's almost no disadvantage playing it. And furthermore, if you use Contraptionist, you actually get the 1/1 body, you get the obelisk, and another card. And if you have Sound the Slaver, you could sack the Contraptionist and get another card. So it seems like it's too easy to just get advantage using this. You get a lot of cards, and then you just start manipulating your mana. On the other hand, a card like this is pretty cool. Being able to use other aspects is nice. Would it be enough to make it legendary? I don't know. Either that or remove the card draw. I'm not sure which one is better. Although I don't think this card is that big of a deal, really. I actually have a bigger issue with New Horizons, if anything, because it allows you to get to those... Yeah, that happens sometimes. I actually have a bigger issue with New Horizons because it allows you to just ramp to those big cards that much faster. You get to your Karthus faster, you get to your Cataclysm faster, and it's a very cheap card to play. You can often play just turn 2 right away, and then you can get another aspect, then you can play a Library Guard, then you can play another Horizons, and the next thing you know, Karthus is just around the corner. And on one hand, it's nice that we have something like this in the game. On the other hand, the whole idea of levels was there to make the really powerful cards come in late, because cards like Karthus and Antriel only actually cost 4 mana, which is not a lot when you have cards in games like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering costing as much as 10. We're usually around 8 or 7, but here it's just 4. So it's ramping up the levels that slows you down the most, because unlike increasing your mana, you don't get the card draw. But with New Horizons, you just bypass it, get that extra aspect while probably developing your mana at the same time. And the fact that it is blue, again, just means that it makes blue the hub of all control, the hub of all splashing, which could be good or bad. I mean, it was going to be one of the aspects. I suppose if you gave this to a different aspect, it would be a little different. It would be a little bit more difficult to do. If this was, let's say, I don't know, nature maybe? Maybe nature. Yeah, nature could be either it or the obelisk become nature. I think that would be the most thematic. It would be a little bit more difficult to just go start out blue, start with one aspect and then just go into whatever you want. But I don't know. Again, much like the obelisk and the vampiric touch, I think if the big boys were gone, this wouldn't be as bad. But the fact that it exists means you could always ramp into something. Whether or not that's good or bad, that's probably a topic for another debate. Moving on. Well, actually, we covered all the big stuff. There are 2 other things. This one, I've already covered a little bit. It's actually this power. Although I feel like this card, this power isn't as bad. It's mostly that we have access to just instant removal. With Karthus, for instance, that lets you just immediately bring back what was killed. Without that, this power I don't think would be nearly as bad. It should still have a cooldown of 3, but it wouldn't be nearly as bad. But I'm putting him up there because, well, he's part of the gang. He's gonna be indicted along with all the others. Poor guy. And the last card I wanted to mention, actually, which is one that's not really been on anybody's radar, I think because this aspect... Oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? Okay, yeah, here we go. Guardian of Awesomeness. I mean, Guardian of the Faithless. Faithful, whatever. I mean, this card is still ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Great stat line, great speed, flying, and a sick effect for a very low cost. I think the reason this card isn't that prolific is simply because Order is not really something you splash. Order is something that you make as your baseline. Either the all-out Angel deck or the black and white Soldier deck, although they don't generally use this card. You can't just splash Order and throw it in. But if you are running Order, you will likely be using this amazing card, because it's an amazing card. Way above the power curve. And to think, it used to be even better. It used to destroy all attacking creatures. But the true power of this card is the fact that it can attack and still use the ability, which makes it kinda nasty. Especially if you don't have 3-attack creatures, 3-speed creatures yourself, I mean. It can just keep attacking you, and then you have to decide to eventually attack yourself and be subjected to its power. So maybe if you just make... Or maybe make it cost mana or something. This shouldn't just be free. Not an ability that's this powerful. I feel like this card... Well, this card can never really become like that big of a deal. Because again, Order is not something you can splash into everything. But maybe it's a good thing that Order has something like this. But maybe not. I don't know. I know when I first saw this card, I thought, wow, I gotta get me 4 of those. Although back then in the closed beta, we didn't have crafting yet, so I kind of had to hope to open them up in packs. You got one from the starter deck, but other than that, you had to hope to get some. So that's enough rambling in this video. Let me know if there's other cards you think are making a little bit too much of an impact. And I'll see you guys in the next video.